So hi everyone, I'm Jack Knowles. I work for an organization called CureDuchenne. CureDuchenne was founded about 14 years ago by Deborah Miller, our CEO, who's sitting in the front row. Her son has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and so she went around trying to find a patient organization that was interested in finding a cure for this disease. Was unable to find one that fit her needs satisfactorily, so she created this organization to really push the science and advance the medicine in the Duchenne space. For those of you that don't know, Duchenne is a X-linked disease, which means it's found on the X chromosome. It's coding for the dystrophin protein, which is the largest protein and subsequently the largest gene in the body. Because it's X-linked, it's more common in boys because if you have a mutation on one of your X chromosomes, it's unlikely you're going to have the same mutation on both. The incidence is about 1 in 3,500, which leads to about a population of 20,000 in the US. Dystrophin, as I mentioned, is a long protein, and when it's absent, it kind of acts as the shock absorber for the muscle cells. Cells that don't have dystrophin don't function as well, ultimately die, and can lead to scarring in muscle tissue. Most of the boys with Duchenne are diagnosed around age 5, usually because they have problems walking and don't meet their developmental milestones. Currently, there are no drugs approved in the space, but there are 3 that are up for approval, and I'll talk a little bit about our impact in the space to date. So we have a very interesting mission, which is to find a cure for Duchenne. This allows us to play a lot of roles. We have made lots of non-dilutive grant funds to academic researchers. We do also have a venture philanthropy model. Really, the science is what we try to focus on. We look for opportunities that haven't been explored previously and fund them. Sure. Sure, thank you. The research strategy that we have is to really try to replicate what is naturally present in the body. Boys are missing dystrophin. We want to do a protein replacement to make sure they have dystrophin. If that's not possible, we're happy to look at genetic transformation, gene therapies, things like that. Ultimately, boys that lack dystrophin also have no dystrophin in their heart muscles, so cardiac heart failure is usually the cause of death, followed by respiratory failure. And finally, because they have skeletal muscle issues, the boys wind up with contractures and fibrosis, so we're looking at anti-fibrotic and anti-inflammatory drugs as well. So CureDuchenne's impact has been pretty robust for such a lean and mean organization. We funded 7 research projects that have advanced to clinical trials. The most important of which I'll talk about in a few seconds was an investment in Prosenza, which started an exon skipping program. That company was bought by BioMarin and is currently in front of the FDA. They presented at their advisory committee meeting in early or late last year, and their PDUFA date is expected imminently. We also funded 5 early stage research programs, and I'll talk a little bit about those deals to help develop new therapies. When companies have problems, we are happy to step in and provide bridge financing. So the deal with Prosenza actually was done at a time when their partnership with GSK in a phase 2 trial did not yield positive data. GSK handed the asset back, and the company was facing difficulty providing drug to the kids that were still in the trial. CureDuchenne stepped in to make sure that the kids could stay on drug. And that's something as a venture philanthropy organization we're happy to do. The mission is really about getting drugs approved and into these kids as soon as possible. As I mentioned, our investments allow these companies to advance and proceed. In addition to Prosenza, we invested in Sarepta, we've invested in PTC, which has had a very long 17-year drug development timeline. Those investments have allowed follow-on investments from traditional venture capital and big pharma. The collective market cap of these companies is somewhere over $5 billion right now. So as this is a non-dilutive meeting, I'll talk about the non-dilutive funds that we have provided. As I mentioned, Sarepta and PTC. Sarepta has also filed a new drug application with the FDA. Their advisory committee meeting is January 22nd, so we'll hope to see that they have a better review process than BioMarin's just was. As I mentioned, PTC has also filed NDA, and so they should have an advisory committee meeting later on this year. We provided funds to Dr. Kevin Flanagan, who's doing new model research for additional therapies for Duchenne. and ReveraGen, which is entering a phase 2A study for replacement to steroids. The other part of our organization is a venture philanthropy model. So in this case, we do like to get equity in the company sometimes when we have the ability to do so. As I mentioned, the Prosenza deal, which was bought by BioMarin, yielded a 6x return to our fund. Recently, we made investments in Capricor, which is a heart stem cell therapy. Myotherix, which is looking at the ranitidine oxygen synthase receptor. Akashi, which is looking at an antifibrotic drug. They just did a deal with a German biotech company called Grenethal for $100 million. Summit Therapeutics is looking at replicating utrophin, which is the fetal version of dystrophin. And most recently, RazRx out of USC is looking at targeting the renin-angiotensin system for fibrosis. And Bamboo Therapeutics, which is a gene therapy company based in North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which is using the AAV vector to deliver a mini dystrophin gene for boys. The model is to make these investments when possible. We don't need VC terms, but we do like to get equity. And when the money is, potentially put to use, there's usually an opportunity to generate an exit once value has been created. At that point, as a venture philanthropy fund, we don't take the money and run. We put it back into the space and really fund the next generation of research. So the venture philanthropy model is one that's been evolving over time. We feel that it's an important part of any fund that's operating in the life sciences space. The fund has the opportunity to be self-sustaining or an evergreen fund. We think that because we're a good partner in the space, we help with getting people into clinical trials. We help with education. We help with outreach to patients. And ultimately, if there is a large financial return, we'd be happy to help with patient access to drugs and those sorts of things as well. We believe that what makes CureDuchenne successful is our knowledge. Deborah has been in the space for 14 years. We have myself, Mike Kelly, who's our CSO. We have access to all of the best KOLs in the space, and a very strong scientific advisory board that we're actively recruiting for at the moment. As I mentioned, we have a lot of access and knowledge from the patient community that we are happy to share with companies that are interested in the Duchenne space. Because we have been around for so long and so many people are, partners with us, we do get presented a lot of deals in the space. So if any VCs or pharma are in attendance and want to hear about interesting Duchenne opportunities, we're happy to speak about them. And finally, I think the strong investment track record we've demonstrated both with the exits at Prosenza and Akashi and my own experience prior to this, I was at MPM Capital, which is a traditional VC fund focused mostly on oncology, but in the Boston, Cambridge area. As I mentioned, this is the current board. These are, fantastic group of folks who help raise money, help direct the fund. This is our scientific advisory board. These are some of the, best and brightest minds in the CureDuchenne space. Ed Kay on the far left, you see, is the CEO of Sarepta currently. And finally, this is our staff. Deborah Miller, as I mentioned, is sitting in the front. Myself, Mike Kelly, our CSO, and the rest of the team. So thank you all for allowing me to speak, and be happy to chat with anyone that wants to talk about Duchenne muscular dystrophy.